Welcome to the IT Fundamentals Training Series. This is episode 36. I am your host, Mark Haupt, and today we're going to talk about how to coordinate users and hardware and providing structure for data management. Join us on episode 36. Welcome back to episode 36. I'm your host, Mark Haupt, and today we're going to go over pages 182 and 183 and 184, really looking at performance management and how to deal with structure for data management and things along those lines. So on page 182, we're looking at coordinating users and hardware. And honestly, this is pretty simple. This goes through a historical section here. First of all, talk about how a little bit about how we had to use things and do things in the olden days, if you will. And I think it's more or less just a historical piece. You don't need to know too much of this for the test, but just kind of give you some of my own background. Back in the day, before we had networking, before we had modern computing systems, there were times when we had to move things from one computer to another on floppy disks, and perhaps even one building to another. Once we finally got networks, it was even then, without the internet or without extremely high-speed lines, we would put things on backup tapes and move them from one location to another and then restore them in that location in order to get the data from one place to another. So you can see how much easier life is now. So when it says there about, thank goodness we've moved beyond needing to spend an entire week manually moving connections around just to do a simple math problem, that's the kind of thing that they're talking about there. They're also hearkening back to what they talked about in the book, and what we talked about in our first installment, episode 35 of this chapter, where people had to take patch panels and literally move the patch panel from one plug to another plug-in in order for the math problems to occur. So those are the kinds of things that they're talking about there. I thought it was a little bit vague when they made that statement, so that's why I wanted to lead off with that and just realize, you guys need to realize that in today's society, we are so much easier to move data, or it is so much easier to move data in incredibly large files, things along those lines for people because of networks. Now, that's not to say that we still don't have problems. For example, a very good friend of mine actually, was telling me the other day, he was offered and given access to about 6 gigabits worth of data that's up on a Microsoft SharePoint location for people to download and work with. And he can't do that because he lives in a very rural environment that uses a satellite connection. And believe it or not, he's really not way out there. He's just in the middle of Missouri. So a lot of rural environments, even my home, it just recently got what I would call barely decent internet, and we're running about 100 megabits down and 20 megabits up. And I know that a lot of people who live even in small towns, that's ridiculous. Slow speed type of stuff. You live in a very populated environment, and that's just unheard of. So in the rural environments today, we still have significant problems with being able to transport data. But if you move farther down in that thing there, it says to talk to the hardware operating systems use specialized programs called the device drivers. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, and that whole application of how the kernel interacts with the device drivers. The device drivers are essentially the BIOS, or the operating system, of the device itself. So for example, if you have a hard drive, or you have a modem, or you have a network interface card, it has a driver on it that allows it to interface up more appropriately with the operating system. Most operating systems, like the Windows operating system and the Apple iOS, they come with built-in drivers that will be more than sufficient for interaction between the different kinds of they call them generic drivers. They're more than sufficient for interaction between the operating system and the device. But if you want to get the most optimization out of it, you can go to the manufacturer's website for the device and download their driver and apply it to the the operating system. So that's what you need to know about the coordinating of users and hardware, is that little bit of a history lesson and talking about the basic functions of the operating system, in particular the kernel. All right, moving on to providing an environment for software. Again, this is very simple stuff. I just encourage you to read what exists there in the book. It's very easy to consume and very easy to understand, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Providing structure for data management, though, is one thing we're going to spend just a moment on. You know, data management is significantly important if you're not an organized person, this concept will be very difficult for you. But if you are naturally an organized person, this concept will be very easy. Data management all revolves around organizations and what they call the directory tree. So your primary hard drive on your computer is, for example, the C drive, and then you have folders underneath that. Okay, and that is the directory tree, or the folders that are underneath that. Or if you have a D drive, or if you have a G drive, those folders underneath there are the directory tree. And the more organized that tree is, the more effective and efficient that tree is, not only for data, but also for applications. So for example, if you go digging deep onto your computer, and I encourage you to do this with a Windows computer, go look on there and look for in the C drive itself, go look for a section that's called programs and files, or it's just called programs, files, or program files parentheses x86. You'll notice that all of your installed software is located underneath there. So Windows will automatically install the software based on whether it's a 32-bit processing piece or a 64-bit processing piece. It will install it under those two different scenarios there. If you look under users, the folder for users, that's where all of the user profiles are located. So if you have a public profile that, you know, anybody that logs into your computer will create a new profile in there. So if you have 5 people in your home or 10 people in your office and they're all accessing the same computer, when they log in, and this is the importance of the security function is logging in, then their profile will be retained underneath that. And then there's the Windows tree, and all of the Windows files and logs and debug capabilities and different things are located underneath that. So you can see the organization of data. And then when you get into database management itself, having a relational database, relational meaning exactly what it is one file, or I'm sorry, one entry relates to another, and tying them back is how you can more easily search data. So that's the importance of providing structure for data management, is that organizational function. If you just threw data anywhere and everywhere on the computer, or if you threw programs anywhere and everywhere, or profiles anywhere and everywhere on the computer, you would have a very, very difficult time in finding them. Now, another important piece, and the final important piece for us to look at here, is monitoring system health and functionality. So a lot of times, you know, people that don't know computers will go, oh, my computer's running slow. Well, okay, we need to dig into that and understand how to do that. The most simple way to know how to do that is to Control-Alt-Delete on your computer and select Task Manager, or as they show in Figure 4.4, Performance Monitor. Okay, and what this will do is it will show you in graphical form how much of the CPU is being utilized, how much of the RAM is being utilized, how much of different functions within the computer are being utilized, including your network interface. So you can understand whether one is overloaded or not. So if you see your RAM is constantly spiking, then you can drill down on that. We call drill downing on it. You can define which software application or which program is utilizing all the RAM, and you can perhaps shut that down or look for an optimized version of it, or you could even go so far as to limit the amount that that program is able to use on your computer. Or maybe that your computer just doesn't have enough memory and you need to add memory to it, which we talked about doing in some of our earlier conversations. Same thing with the CPU, same thing with the other functions, the network interface card. Perhaps the network interface card I've used before to determine if there's a DDoS attack coming into my computer, or if my computer has had a virus on it and is constantly pumping out data and information. I'm able to see that by looking at the statistics and the performance monitor that's associated with the network interface card. So the spikes in performance, where it says on page 184, the spikes in performance is what's helped open up the situation to understand better what's going on your computer, and you can then use that information to fix the problem, so to speak. So, all right, that's episode 36. Thanks for joining me. The book is fairly self-explanatory. I do recommend that you spend some time hands-on in your computer looking at Task Manager and looking at the Windows Performance Monitor to get some better idea. In fact, I would go through Task Manager and shut down an application. For example, you can right-click and do End Program, or select it and End Program, and see the difference, see how it impacts your system, and being able to tune your system and the performance, because lots of times programs will just start up as part of the startup routine that you really don't need to be and have running on your computer, and they take resources. And if you have a smaller resource computer, that can be a significant challenge. All right, once again, episode 36 is in the books. Hopefully this was helpful, and I look forward to talking to you in episode 37.